Well, we've been going through a series on faith, and I think what an encouraging series to be going through, as trusting God's promises in any situation, and looking through the looking for the chapter of Hebrews 11, and a lot through the book of Genesis this last few weeks. Just been really encouraging in times of difficulty. Last week we looked at when God tested Abraham by asking him to sacrifice his son Isaac. And we had some active children last week drawing us pictures, illustrations of what this might have looked like. So it's crazy just thinking about what would it be like if God asked you to sacrifice what you love most in the world? What would go through your mind if God asked you to sacrifice your own son? And just kind of the difficulties that would, the conflict, the difficulties that would bring in our hearts and our minds as we're conflicted. And so last week, we looked at Genesis 22, where we talked about Abraham saying, or God saying to Abraham, Abraham, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and sacrifice him. Then we see Abraham responds in faith. Abraham responds in obedience. And so he gathers up all of his supplies. He gets everything all together. You can see all the supplies are laid out here. And then he heads out across a 3-day journey to Mount Moriah. And so as they reach the mountain, he then tells his servants, he says, stay here, we will worship, we will sacrifice, and we will return. And so you see the faith of him even when he's going to kill his son. And then Isaac is asking, where's the sacrifice here in this picture? And Abraham is saying, God will provide. And so the faith was there throughout the entire time. And so then as Abraham is reaching with his knife to kill his son, he's interrupted by an urgent call from heaven. Stop. Abraham, Abraham, do not kill your son. And instead, here's this ram caught in a thicket, which you're to sacrifice in its place. And I like the child over here on the right side, learned to trust God and your parents. So Nathaniel Samuel, that's a good one for you guys to remember from last week. Trust God and your parents. And so then after the sacrifice of the ram, they're very happy and they're returning. And just what a great picture of passing the test. A great picture of passing the most difficult test the world has ever seen. When God asked Abraham to kill his son Isaac. And so just to summarize what we talked about last week, Hebrews 11, 17 through 19 does a great job of that. By faith, Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. Abraham, who had embraced the promises, was about to sacrifice his one and only son. Abraham reasoned that God could even raise the dead, and so in a manner of speaking, he did receive Isaac back from the dead. And so here you've got a picture of Abraham trusting that God's promises are even more powerful than death itself. And we also have a wonderful picture of Jesus, of God's one and only son dying as a sacrifice for our sins. So